Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where we'll be talking about platform engineering and how CI/CD fits in that in particular. My name is Zan Markan, and to quickly cover the agenda, we will start with a very brief introduction into what platform engineering is, because there's quite a few varying definitions out there. It's just what I feel or how I understand it, why it's important, especially to mature large organizations, and what kind of approaches do platform engineering teams take when they are setting everything up for their engineers. Moving on, we will cover a little introduction into CircleCI in general and how it kind of fits into the software delivery lifecycle. They're going to merge those two together, essentially look at what part and role CI/CD can play in a developer internal development platform in particular, some features that are very interesting to folks building those platforms. And of course, we'll do a little demo at the end of the presentation, some CircleCI features that are, I deem, very useful and helpful. At any time during the session or after, if you have a question, please use the Q&A feature right here in Zoom. We will get to your questions. If they're super relevant, we might answer them on air, or we might also answer them at the end in dedicated Q&A section. My colleague Claire is also on the call. She will be dropping any links to things that we're talking about and just making sure that everything works for everyone. So yeah, without further ado, let's crack on. My name is Zan Markan. I'm a developer advocate at CircleCI. I'm based in London, UK, and usually I cover the EMEA region. So through workshops, conference talks, webinars as well, essentially just connecting to the communities within EMEA that use CircleCI, that don't know about CircleCI, that want to learn more about DevOps in general or things like platform engineering, and connect them with our internal teams as well. So yeah, if you want to keep in touch, want to email me, my details are on the screen. One other thing to mention, obviously, you will get the recording of this session in your email. So you can always get back to it, the same as with slides. So yeah, let's talk about platform engineering, what it is and why we want to know about it. So especially within large enterprise organization, it's crucial to find this balance between productive developers, productive development teams that can actually ship a lot of features, a lot of new products, and also do so reliably, because you already have this organization that is working really well. It's very efficient, and you don't want to disturb that too much. So that's why it's crucial for enterprises to balance this productivity, developer happiness, developer speed with doing things in a reliable, reproducible manner. What we've seen is that oftentimes these organizations, they tend to adopt these internal developer platforms and platform engineering teams who are basically just focused on making their developers more productive and more effective through building, choosing, or just standardization of various tools and processes. What kind of tools and processes we're talking about, I'll cover in just a second. And the ideal state, I'm emphasizing this, is a fully kind of self-serve approach for product teams So if a product team has a need for a database, they can get that database. If they have a need for obviously a CI/CD service, they have that. There is all these tools already ready and available to them. They can just pick and choose and mix and match and build whatever they want to build without any constraints or new requisitions or whatnot. That's the ideal state. We're not always there. Actually, very few organizations are probably there or are ever going to be there. So we're always kind of striving to go towards that goal. But yeah, it's the ideal state we want to reach. So yeah, what we've seen within various organizations is that you have this kind of single platform core. This can be a single organization, a single team or multiple teams whose goal is enabling multiple product teams. So think about as a hub and spoke model where the platform team is this hub that multiple product engineering teams are kind of connected to use services of. Your platform your product as a platform is essentially being used by other developers. This can be either, one team or separate teams building things like CI/CD pipelines, cloud infrastructure. So for example, if you have someone managing your AWS resources, that could be a whole team's responsibility or multiple teams. Yeah, so there's many ways to do it. There's many ways to call it as well. Obviously, platform engineering team is a term that's gaining in popularity. There's also cloud infrastructure, DevOps, engineering enablement, SRE in some cases, CI/CD engineering. All of these things sometimes mean platform engineering. So that's what we're talking about. So yeah, what kind of standardization we're talking about? And I've taken this slide this was very inspired by Ulf Monson's talk at Config Management Camp earlier in 2023. You can look it up. It's a very good overview of platform engineering approaches in various organizations. Ultimately, you want to standardize things like naming, whether that's your cloud resources, your pipelines, your projects, your teams, processes. You want to find this standard, easy to reason about way to name and discover resources. So if you think about it, if you go into some kind of cloud environment, you want to know who a service belongs to. You want to know exactly which team it is. So that's why naming is very, very important. The same with pipelines, same with workflows that you might be running, etc. Everything kind of starts and ends with good naming conventions. But then it goes obviously beyond that. So you want to standardize a few programming languages. Let's choose Java, maybe some Go, maybe some Python. So whatever fits your organization, you kind of choose, and then you have a nice array of things for development teams to choose from. And all the way down to build tools like Gradle or Maven or Bazel. It doesn't really matter what it is, as long as everyone is on board. That's then part of the platform, because if you have multiple teams using whatever, that's not really a developer platform. And yeah, tooling is obviously what we'll be talking about here today, as part of our CI/CD exploration. So yeah, let's talk about CI/CD and in particular CircleCI, how we see it. So CircleCI, we are the leading, biggest company dedicated to CI/CD. Our platform is used by many millions of developers and teams each month. And when we're thinking about where CI/CD fits in an organization or in the software delivery lifecycle, it's right there in the middle. On one side, you have your code being written based on whatever tickets you have going on, whether it's issues, bugs, epics you might be working on. Based on that, you will be creating some code probably, committing and pushing it to your repository, GitLab, GitHub, Bitbucket. And then you want to run and build that code somewhere. And that somewhere is a CI/CD platform such as CircleCI, which will basically do whatever you need. Verify, run security scans, compile, build, and obviously push to your environments, whether that's a cloud native application running on Kubernetes, on Google Cloud Platform, AWS, or a mobile application going to the App Store or Play Store. It doesn't really matter. It's very agnostic. And usually that's just like one team's life cycle. If you think about what a platform engineering organization might see, they might see dozens of these or even hundreds of these life cycles that all kind of use this kind of same central tooling. And that's when standardization and kind of the center of excellence comes into play, really handy. So I want to just touch on this very quickly. So we run a lot of pipelines for a lot of people. And then every year we release our kind of flagship state of software delivery report. My colleague Claire will drop a link in there in the chat. So we just released this one. It's from September 2020. We've been 2022. Sorry, we've been taking snapshots of workflows being run, and we've compiled this beautiful report based on 15 million almost 15 million workflows that were run during that time, to give you some insights into what kind of mean time to recovery, what the most popular languages and frameworks are, etc. So some very cool insights and data is in there, just kind of showing the scope that we're dealing with on our platform. So speaking of our platform, you usually see when you're using it, you usually see either two things. One is the configuration. Obviously, we need to tell your CI/CD tool what to do. In CircleCI, we use the YAML format for that. You have this config YAML file. I'll show that to you in the demo a bit more in depth. And then you have your dashboard where you essentially see a bunch of things being executed, the results. You can dig into insights, etc. What I'm not showing you here is the actual API, because obviously everything that you see in the dashboard, everything you click through, is also possible via an API, and things like webhooks and our VS Code extension, which kind of gives you another view of that. So when we're writing a config, we are reasoning with a few things. That at the top level, you have things like pipelines. A pipeline is what gets triggered when you essentially send us a triggering event. This can be a commit being pushed over to your GitHub or GitLab repository, or this could be an API call. This could be a cron job. It doesn't really matter. And the only thing that matters with a pipeline is that it has a linear lifecycle and it can contain multiple workflows. What are workflows? They're essentially a graphing of jobs. So you basically orchestrate what needs to happen in which order with what dependency. And with what this is, what jobs are like the atomic unit of work that executes in a given environment. That could be a virtual machine, a Docker container, and essentially you specify a list of commands. I'll show you all of that in a demo. One last thing that is worth pointing out here are orbs, which are our kind of way to extend the basic functionality of your config, and especially when you're dealing with a lot of different projects, a lot of different pipelines, you want to strive for this reproducibility. And that is why we have introduced the concept of orbs, which are essentially reusable packages of YAML configuration for your pipelines, so that you can have easy way to reproducible steps, jobs, and executors. So yeah, that was a little bit about CircleCI. Now let's talk about how CI/CD in general and development platform really work. So in a platform, you really want to centralize on this kind of CI/CD best practices. I called it Center of Excellence earlier. You can build templates for all new projects. So let's say we're spinning up a new project team, we're spinning up a new microservice. You could have, because you know all your languages, frameworks that you're using, cloud environments, you can have pre-canned configurations for these. So we know we're going to run a test. We know we're going to run a security scan. So you just include that in your template, and it gets you started a lot faster than doing everything from scratch. Obviously, cloud infrastructure, you can't rely on ClickOps for provisioning and maintaining that, especially in production. So that's when pipelines also come in handy. You want to centralize this, where this provisioning happens, where this creation and management happens. That's usually through a CI/CD pipeline. Ultimately, the goal being to standardize the whole software delivery and processes and practices. We also want to integrate and talk to other tooling, because we're right in the middle of this life cycle. We can talk to things like security scanning tools. I'll show you one in action in a bit. We can talk to your teams via your communication channels, such as Slack. You probably use Slack or something similar in your teams on a day-to-day basis, and you might want to inform your teams whether there is a new deployment being done or there is a new deployment that fails. That's all possible through that. Product management, through your kind of Jira integration, for example, you could just flag each deployment. Hey, this is now live. You can go test, you can go check it out. And ultimately, whenever you're doing some releases or something similar, you can then flag that to your operations team who want to know that your releases have gone out. And that's, again, just things that you are that you can integrate with, that you are definitely interested in as a platform team or a platform team manager. So yeah, in CircleCI, obviously, we have few features that are addressing these things. First one is it's self-serve. Anyone who can commit, anyone who can see projects in your repositories can use CircleCI. If you commit, you're a user of CircleCI. And that goes for any platform, from your backend engineers pushing code to Kubernetes, to your mobile developers, to your web developers. We can build whatever, from Windows, Mac, VMs to whatever you want to run on a Docker. We can usually do that, and obviously give you a nice dashboard with insights to give you some insights on what's actually happening in your pipelines. We also give you, the platform team especially, varying levels of guardrails you can establish or prepare for your teams. For example, as I mentioned, the templated projects, that's very trivial, to be honest, because it just pre-canned config. You can also limit it a lot more through config policies, and we'll link to those resources in the session description later and in the end of the slides. So you want to limit something, some resources, and force, for example, a particular Docker image being used in your testing jobs, building deployment jobs. You can do that. You can specify roles and permissions for fine-grained access controls, who can deploy, who can approve something, and ultimately also publishing orbs for your organization. So if you have common deployment scenarios, common infrastructure provisioning scenarios, you can create your own private orbs in CircleCI that only your organization can see and are specific to your use case. So now I've talked for a long time. Let me show you some CircleCI. So first, I want to just show you the UI. So this is the dashboard. As you log in, I have connected a GitHub repository. I'm part of an organization. This one is one we use for our workshops often. And this is one of our workflows that we have. So as you can see, so far, everything has been green. And these boxes here in this workshop, in this workflow, are essentially individual jobs. I can go click on it and see where my tests are running. So build and test runs in a Docker executor. So this is the environment. I have specified the exact image to use. I can see like individual tests and things like that. And every single step that has been executed is obviously also listed here. If I go back, you also see this approval job is waiting for us. I'll cover that in a little bit. But ultimately, that is the platform. We can go, into any step. You can see the command line output. If anything didn't work, you would see a red box. The workflow would fail. Pretty standard and practice for CI/CD. When you have all these pipelines running, especially on multiple teams, you're interested in seeing some data on it. So these are our insights feature. So insights are your way to essentially interact with all the hard data on our platform. For example, let's go into one project. This corresponds to my GitHub project, and this corresponds to my workflow that's running there on a particular branch. And then, from the top level, seeing all the projects, how they're performing, which ones are more or less performant. You can go into individual projects. I haven't run this one in a while, so it doesn't have a ton of stuff on this graph. But if in a real world scenario you have daily commits going in, you have daily executions, you would see this a lot nicer. You see your success rates, you see your you can also go down into individual jobs and see, okay, why is my cluster creation job going slower now than previously? What's going on? What have we changed? So from individual developer, they can drill down into each individual aspect of a job to someone who's interested in performance of the entire organization to just kind of see, oh, these people are shipping a lot more. Why? They must be following some better practices. What can we teach the other part of the teams? All the way down to each individual developer who maybe just want to see like test results. How are their tests performing? Are there any flaky tests, etc.? So whoever wants to see what, they can usually do that. So I mentioned approval jobs. So that one is essentially just waiting for someone, me namely, to approve before going for a next step. Again, you can lock this out. So only, for example, a security team member can perform a security review, and only they can actually hit approve. So again, locking things out so that you are working towards whatever your organizational requirements are for shipping, for publishing, for deploying. In this case, I just had a cluster running and I wanted to destroy it. But you could have multiple approvals in parallel saying, yes, security needs to review, delivery needs to review, whoever needs to review, they can all have the same kind of flow. You can message them over on your Slack directly ping them, hey, this is waiting for you. You go in, approve, job done, it continues. So yeah, this is usually done through what, actually, let me show you some code. So yeah, I hope this is all visible. Please let me know if it's not. I can probably make it a little bit more visible. This might be a bit better. So this is the config that corresponds to this workflow. As I said, it's all YAML. It's config.yaml file in the .circleci directory at top level of your Git repository. And it doesn't matter what order you declare this. I like to declare orbs at the top, and then jobs, and then workflows at the end. You could do whichever. But yeah, I have my test scan deploy workflow defined with a graph of jobs. Build and test, dependency vulnerability scan, build Docker image. And then if a job needs to require something, for example, build Docker image is required for creating the cluster, that's when you can specify it over there. And that's how you get this kind of workflow. For example, if this one required both these two jobs, I would just list them here, and they would all be reflected in the graph, and they will obviously not continue if that doesn't terminate. Jobs themselves, as I mentioned, they just have every single one has an environment specified. In this case, this is a Docker image, Docker container based off a specified image. These are our kind of CircleCI publish called convenience images for just CI/CD purposes. They have some tools pre-installed. They have some tools removed that you might not need. And they're like language specific, deployment specific. There are a number. We have a developer portal where you can find much more. For example, my build and test job just uses the node environment, and then we check out run node/install packages. This is actually coming from that node orb that we have defined earlier, and then these are just run commands, so command line instructions to run something. So yeah, that's how we then specify everything. This is pretty much reproducible throughout every project. What I haven't shown you yet are the contexts. So contexts are a way to say what each individual job within a workflow can access, and that can include environment variables that we store directly in there, or let's say my Docker context is only used by jobs that require connecting to Docker Hub. We can specify which projects have access to it. If you want to, again, do more fine-grained controls, or even security groups. For example, only the lead engineers could publish new images to Docker Hub. You could do that by just kind of using your security groups. I have some in my Git organization, and they're just kind of used from there. And you can have, directly store environment variables in there, rotate them either manually or through APIs. It's possible. There is also a way to authenticate via OIDC. I'll talk about that in a bit later. And I forgot to point out this. So in this organizational settings, this is kind of tied to your Git organization or CircleCI organization. You can also specify things like technical context. So if there is an upgrade that you need to do with some of the images, for example, we're just doing an upgrade of our machine images, they would be notified again with the security context. So these are the people that you usually want to these are the contexts that are usually sitting on those platform teams that want to be notified. So yeah, that's a little short tour about of the platform. Now let's talk about orbs. So orbs, as I mentioned, are major part of CircleCI, what makes the developer experience so great, because you have things like Slack orb to just notify someone based on a branch, based on what's happening, and just use that as a command. The same with things like you've seen Node.js orb. There is a orb for Sneak, which I use for security scan. There's one. There are a bunch of orbs for AWS, for example. This one installs the CLI, authenticates it. So yeah, and you can obviously build your own as well. The orbs that we publish are all open source, so you can actually just check them out and see how they're created, how they're tested. You can even check the implementation right within the orb portal. And if you're interested in building new ones, there is this thing called Orb Development Kit, which allows you to build new orbs for your organization. It consists of one template project and an orb to actually test all of that. So as you publish an orb, it actually runs the CircleCI pipeline. Its pipelines all the way down. One more thing that's very important for every team that's managing a ton of pipelines is the API access. And obviously, everything within CircleCI that you can do in the dashboard is more or less supported on the API as well. So you can automate and script however you want, whatever you want. You can create new context, add and remove new environment variables. You can trigger pipelines with an API. You can even trigger pipelines with external parameters. For example, you can have a bot for your Slack group to basically trigger you testing builds for whatever environment you have. You could have you could trigger builds based on other pipelines results. So there are a ton of resources in there that you can do. And usually what we see is usually people are just, once they are past a certain number of pipelines, projects managed, they tend to build their own integrations using the API. As I mentioned, yeah, we have OIDC support for our pipelines. They work with, OIDC are basically dynamic, short-lived tokens that you can use to authenticate with various cloud services. AWS has support for it. GCP has support for it. HashiCorp Vault has support for it. So if you don't want to store secrets in CircleCI, you can actually authenticate each individual project, give it a role within with OIDC through AWS, and then project can only access the resources that you have set up. I have done a little demo in a previous webinar that will be linked. There is a video on YouTube. You can review it. I walk you through the platform and the features of that. So I won't go too deep into this, but it's definitely a use case worthwhile mentioning for this. The same with config policies, one of our more recent features. So essentially, sometimes you want to write policies that execute before your config actually is executed, to kind of give you even more assurance that only what you allow on an organization level can actually be triggered. And you can do things like specify context using a branch. Like in this case, for example, there was a pipeline that had the wrong context specified on the wrong branch. So when the config policy engine looked at it, or saw it, it basically broke that that pipeline, said, hey, you can't do it. You have a policy violation here. You should fix it. You define it. It's all based on open policy agent, and there are pre-go files you write and upload these policies, so you can centralize pretty much anything and define pretty much anything within your org, from which Docker images to use, to which orbs to use, to what kind of jobs you want in there. You can define them as those policies. My colleague Derry has done a webinar session with that. It's in the same webinar that the OIDC demo that I just mentioned is. So I welcome you to check it out. And yeah, my colleague Claire has just dropped the link in there. So that essentially concludes the demo part. I'll just summarize this quickly. So what we talked about is we essentially define what IDPs are, so internal development platforms. They combine this self-service approach that developer teams really kind of want, is the ideal state you want to enable and not block them, with some standardization, as much standardization as possible, so you can optimize for both productivity and repeatability and reliability, which is very important in a large organization. Usually we've seen a lot of central platform teams with variant names who manage infrastructure and tooling, including CI/CD pipelines and best practices for multiple product teams in a hub and spoke model. And when you're looking at your developer development lifecycle, CI/CD really is the glue. That's a core component of any development platform. You optimize for that, kind of centralize on that. You develop best practices, adopt the newest and latest features, and anyone and everyone on your development, in your development organization, on your dev teams are going to benefit from it. We have covered some of the main CircleCI features that really help platform engineering teams, and we have touched on the state of software delivery report. And that essentially concludes the live part of the session, and I will take any questions now. Let's see if we have any. Yeah, someone asked about the recording. If you missed the beginning, please, you will get your recording along with slides and any additional resources in an email early next week. There was a question about what might be the difference between CircleCI and GitHub Actions. CircleCI is a much more mature platform, especially when it comes to CI/CD. We are the whole company dedicated to this experience, and some of the features that I was showing you, for example, insights, are just not there. And as I said, our state of software delivery report just shows the scale and capability that we tend to cover. So yeah, are there any more questions? Yeah, I think there's nothing. So again, yeah, you will get my details. You will have the recording, the slides from the session in an email. So you can just refer to that and then reach out to myself. Oh, there is actually a question. Are there any demos, tutorials, videos setting up a CircleCI pipeline from scratch? Yes. course, we have substantial documentation. So in the docs, you have things like quick start guides for various programming languages. There are also some quick start configs that you can use. For example, if I have a Node.js project, there are starter configs, we call them, that are already out there. So you can get started very quickly. If you have an existing project, you have, we publish a ton of great tutorials on our blog. So just search for CircleCI blog. Actually, I might just, yeah, it's linked to on the pages, obviously. So there are a number of tutorials for various CI/CD and DevOps topics, and there are definitely some useful videos on YouTube as well, showing demos, more one-on-one content, etc. And me and a few of my colleagues are regularly doing workshops around the world. So if you see one of those, please do sign up, and we can show you how to build one from scratch and just explain everything live. So yeah, that was all from our end. I don't think we have any further questions. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope you have a lovely rest of the day.